connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is embracing the unknown. We live in paradox of wanting change and resisting change all at once, and the paradox of that. And uh, embracing the unknown is unfamiliar and often uncomfortable, and learning to embrace that with open arms is a challenge that is calling to us and offers great vitality and possibility. So that's what we're talking about today. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning. We're just going to take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, we're talking about embracing. And originally, I was going to call this holding paradox. It's kind of like holding with open hand. There are contradictions in um, in this conversation that we're looking to embrace, and uh, the contradiction that we're really talking about, for instance, is wanting change and resisting change. Wanting change and still wanting things to be comfortable, wanting change and still wanting things to stay the same. And this is coming from a conversation that we started yesterday, and kind of the aftermath for me. And I always talk about something that I can relate to personally, and hopefully you find these things relatable as well, where something happens that you've been longing for, and the response to that is brings all kinds of contradictory and intense emotion. So I was talking about deciding to move, barring any unforeseen circumstances, deciding to move from the place that I've lived for 23 years in by June, which is just like 3.5 months away. It's not very far away at all. And it was so interesting to experience this profound flood of emotion and tears that was kind of unexpected. Feelings of overwhelm and sadness and just grieving, which was so interesting in the face of the unknown that I'm I'm looking into. Uh, there's so the grieving was around loss of the familiar, right? Um, the unknowns about how this transition is going to come into play and occur, and really not knowing how to achieve it. Rosalind says Oaxaca, Mexico. Well, I really would love to move to Mexico, but I'm not willing or ready to do that on my own. I really want to be in community with people that I care about, and I don't have that community. I thought I was going to have that community in Pátzcuaro, Mexico, but at the moment that's not there. So I don't know where I'm going. So that's another unknown, is to kind of open my being and my heart to this unknown emergence. I have been wanting to uh, leave where I am for a long time, but I didn't want to leave just to leave. I wanted to be able to have a place to go to. And again, barring any unforeseen circumstances, it looks like it's actually finally happening. So what was so surprising, and it was really truly unexpected to me to have this dramatic cascade of emotions, like even before the excitement of being on a new adventure, which is peeking through a little bit. There was the fear, anxiety, sadness, grieving, confusion, all kinds of feelings coming forward in the face of change and in the face of the unknown. And I think that we all are facing the unknown on so many levels collectively, that it's an important conversation to recognize all these emotions and to allow them, so that we can allow them to process through, so that we can allow them to move through our bodies and being, rather than stifle them or crystallize them in our physicality. So it's energy. All this emotion is energy that we get to process through, and not to shunt away or deny. And there's a lot. It's a lot. All that energy. And to be willing to recognize and acknowledge what those emotions are. And right now, in our political atmosphere, there's a lot of fear and anxiety and around the unknown, and anger too at the disruption. And I'm not saying that we ought to be passively embracing uh, the the uh, the disruption, but to be willing to acknowledge all the emotions that are arising around it. It's an opportunity, I think, in addressing those emotions, to expand our capabilities, to expand our capacity and to expand our capacity to respond appropriately to the needs of the moment, right? So there's a lot that arises just in my circumstance, which is very, very different from what we're looking at politically. But, you know, there are actions that are calling to be taken. And I think as we allow ourselves to process through our emotions, we become better able to respond appropriately, to take the actions that are being called for, and to not get swept up in the emotion for its own sake, you know, to recognize and embody and express the emotion, but not get swept into the vortex, you know, to allow it to move through rather than to anchor it in. And I think that that's an important distinction, you know, to experience the emotion and not get all caught up in the story behind the emotion, to experience and process it and allow it to move through. And then there's a clearing that arises that allows us to see with greater acuity what is being called for. So, in embracing the unknown, what we want to do is to move into a place of responsiveness rather than reactivity, where we get to be discerning about how to best direct our energies, how best to direct our attentions, and maybe wait for that clarity before taking action. Because the reactivity can complicate things unnecessarily, you know, where we want to be able to move from a place of responsiveness. And so it's worthwhile to be doing the personal growth work before doing the action, to be in alignment rather than just taking action. A lot of times people, all of us, I think, will jump into action as a way to avoid emotion, to not have to feel the way we feel. So we'll grab any action, and it's not necessarily best action. We see this in approaches to climate, the climate crisis, and mitigating certain circumstances, trying to create something better, but often in our rush to do so, we can create more damage than good. So I'm not saying not to act, I'm saying to come to a place of clarity around best action, to be able to see the bigger picture and to be guided by that greater vision of a system, so that we can be more systematic, more responsive to the system itself. And there is a place after we process through the emotions, there is a place where excitement and enthusiasm can emerge as well. And there's this holding of polarity. As I said, I was going to call this holding paradox, where we yearn for change, and then when change arises, we yearn for the comfort that we had before there was such disruption, right? And being able to hold the paradox, hold with open hand, both, so that rather than rushing to an answer, we're able to be in the question, to be in the discovery, to be radically present. And from that radical presence, recognize calls to right action and inspired action. So I'm not saying that there's absolute right or wrong, and maybe there is, but to be, the more present we can be, the more responsive we can be to whatever the circumstances are and the action that they're calling for. And part of that radical presence is to be present and accepting of all the feels, all the feelings that arise, all the emotions, as contradictory as they might be as well, without story. And I think that that's the most important piece here in being able to embrace the unknown, is not getting caught up in the meaning that we are assigning, even if that meaning that we're assigning is positive, to just be in a place where we can allow the emergence that doesn't have to be explicitly defined necessarily. And the interesting thing is that we find such comfort in explanations and believing that we know how things are going to be. And it's in these kinds of moments that, for me anyway, it's ever more important to deepen into the practice of life is happening for me and through me rather than to me. That who I am is life expressing itself. And life is not, we don't find straight lines so much in life. I've heard people say that, and then I think about crystals, and crystals have these edges. But to be able to flow with life is our greatest gift. And that's how we can embrace the unknown with open arms, open hand, and allow life to flow through us and allow for the emergence. So I just was exposed to a book about manifesting, and it's a particular chapter about manifesting, and I'm trying to remember the person's name. It was Neville somebody, or somebody Neville. And I think I'm gonna read this short chapter. So let me see if I can find the proper reference here. Here it is.
This is where
Oops, oops. Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard. And you can find this on YouTube and online if you look up The Principle of Least Action by Neville Goddard. Well, actually, that's the chapter that we're going to read, and it's pretty short, I think. So I should be able to read it rather quickly, but I think it's a very interesting perception and awareness that carries into not just manifestation, but in every aspect of life. So the principle of least action governs everything in physics, from the path of a planet to the path of a pulse of light. Least action is the minimum of energy multiplied by the minimum of time. Therefore, in moving from your present state to the state desired, you must use the minimum of energy and take the shortest possible time. Your journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. And pay attention to that, right? Your journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. And yes, Hope. Hi, welcome. Yes, Neville Goddard. So you're already on top of this. So your journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. So to make the journey, you must employ the psychological equivalent of least action. And the psychological equivalent is mere assumption. The day you fully realize the power of assumption, you discover that it works in complete conformity with this principle. It works by means of attention minus effort. Thus, with least action through an assumption, you hurry without haste and reach your goal without effort, because creation is finished. What you desire already exists. It is excluded from view because you can see only the contents of your own consciousness. We talk about releasing all these impediments to or overlays to our being, and that's what he's talking about here. It's a function of an assumption to call back the excluded view and restore full vision. It's not the world, but your assumptions that change. An assumption brings the invisible into sight. It is nothing more nor less than seeing with the eye of God, i.e., imagination. For the Lord seeth not as a man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. The heart is the primary organ of sense, not our brains. Hence, the first cause of experience. When you look on the heart, you are looking at your assumptions. Assumptions determine your experience. Watch your assumption with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Assumptions have the power of objective realization. Every event in the visible world is the result of an assumption or idea in the unseen world. The present moment is all important, for it is only in the present moment that our assumptions can be controlled. The future must become the present in your mind if you would wisely operate the law of assumption. The future becomes the present when you imagine that you already are what you will be when your assumption is fulfilled. I'm going to read that again. The future becomes the present when you imagine that you already are what you will be when your assumption is fulfilled. Be still, least action, and know that you are that which you desire to be. The end of longing should be being. Translate your dream into being. Perpetual construction of future states without the consciousness of already being them, that is, picturing your desire without actually assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the fallacy and mirage of mankind. It's simply futile daydreaming. So the end of longing should be being. We get to create ourselves by stepping into the experience that we desire. So it's a matter of allowing the release of the overlays in order to be radically present and to notice what these assumptions are, and then to consciously generate them. This is why it's so important to be curating our story. It's the same principle. And in embracing the unknown, it is that radical presence. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's such a gift to have the opportunity to be with you and to share these morning musings. So until next time, so